Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Spartan Spotlight podcast. I'm your host, Justin Thind. Today I'm joined by David Klein of SpartanHoops.com. David, thanks for joining us today. How you doing?
Good, man. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. Figured we turn to one of the resident MSU basketball experts today as we head into March Madness here this week. What we're going to go ahead and do today is we're going to run through the entire NCAA tournament bracket, kind of give you some of our picks and what we're kind of thinking is going to happen in this year's tournament. In no way, shape, or form is this financial advice.
That's a good disclaimer.
You may be better off investing in blockbuster stock. We're not entirely sure how this is going to go, but we're going to go ahead and give it our best shot. David, you ready to get started here?
Let's do it. I'm excited.
All right. So we'll start here up in the West region. I'm assuming we're both taking Gonzaga there. So
that should be an easy pick.
Yeah. So what are you thinking for this Oklahoma-Missouri 8-9 matchup?
That's a great question. I've seen Oklahoma play a few times this year, and I came away reasonably impressed. But they had a really tough stretch to end the year. They lost their 4 last regular season games. They beat Iowa State, who was kind of the punching bag for the Big 12, and then they lost to Kansas.
Yep.
In the the Big 12 tournament. I'm probably rolling Missouri here, but it's one of those situations where, both teams have had struggle spots during the stretch of the season. It's an 8-9 matchup.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the spread ends up being, but I'm assuming it's going to be pretty close. I'm going to lean Missouri. What about you?
Yeah, I also have Missouri, and the biggest sticking factor for me was, like you said, Oklahoma lost their last 4 regular season games to close the year. Both of these teams have high ceilings. For example, they both have wins against Alabama. But at the end of the day, I'm going to have to go with whoever has the hotter hand right now, since, like you said, it's a very close matchup, and that's obviously Missouri heading into this part of the season. Next up, we have Creighton and UC Santa Barbara. This is one of those 5-12 games that I guess typical formula would suggest that you pick one of these upsets here in a bracket in a usual year. I guess I'll go ahead first. And so this is kind of a thing where Creighton didn't look that good in the Big East tournament, but then you kind of wonder, is that like a one-off thing? Are they going to get it sorted out here? Obviously, there was that whole thing with their coach being suspended. And then at the same time, UC Santa Barbara has 2 kids that are high major transfers. One of them, I believe, was the Big West Player of the Year this past year. They're kind of built in a way where they can make them like a slight run in March. I kind of have UC Santa Barbara here advancing. What are you thinking with this game?
I don't think it's a bad pick. You got to wonder for Creighton, like, what is that locker room like currently? Like, he returns, they kind of lay an egg and, basically allow Georgetown to get into the tournament. I don't know. I think I would still choose Creighton. I think coming into the season, I was kind of interested to see how they did just, with the shooting that they had and just the style of play. I can't say that I've watched a ton of UC Santa Barbara this year. So this one, again, is a little bit one of those 5-12s. You pick the sexy, upset in this case. I'm going to lean Creighton on this. Just, I trust, generally speaking, the power conference in this. I think that Creighton showed that they can beat a lot of good teams this year. A tough stretch down the way, and the whole coaching thing was a little bit awkward. So I'm still leaning Creighton, but if they get upset, I guess don't color me surprised on that.
Yeah, definitely. And then the next game is the 4-seed Virginia against the 13-seed Ohio. I have Virginia here, but I will say that this is a game that could be closer than some people are expecting. Virginia is still, I believe, quarantining, and they might be quarantining for another couple of days, if I'm not mistaken. They're not getting any practices in right now while Ohio is. And then obviously Ohio has Jason Preston. 1-star player probably isn't going to be enough for them to beat Virginia, but I feel like this could be a pretty close game, even though I see the Cavaliers moving on. What are your thoughts?
I think obviously that will be interesting for both Virginia and Kansas coming into this situation where we're not really sure where, who is actually out for the program and when they're going to get a chance to suit back up. I assume that they feel comfortable with it, but would you be surprised, I guess, if we get to the latter part of it and all of a sudden there's a substitution. It's not out of the question here. If Virginia's playing, I think that their style is hard sometimes to overcome, especially when you haven't seen it. I'll trust Sam Hauser to get the job done in Virginia over Ohio on this one.
Yes, definitely. So then what are you thinking for this USC versus Wichita or Drake matchup?
Evan Mobley is going to carry the day here for USC. I've watched Wichita State once and Drake maybe once, but I think that, when you get into March, you probably are going to lean towards NBA top 3, top 4 picks in this type of matchup. I'm going to say Evan Mobley.
Yeah, this one was actually pretty cut and dry. I don't know why I really set the stage for you to give some sort of rationale for that one. And then Kansas, same way. I know they're missing some guys, but I think we're going to go ahead and just pencil them in for the next round here.
Yeah, just how long is David McCormick out? Because he kind of changed the ceiling for this team a little bit for them.
I think he might be out a while, but I know one of their players should be back right after this game.
I thought Jalen Wilson did not travel with the team. Is that correct?
I think
he's not going to be available.
I believe Jalen Wilson didn't travel with the team, but I believe he's the one that should be back the soonest, unless I'm mistaken. Because he didn't actually test positive for the virus. Maybe none of them did, but I know I read somewhere that he might be back for the round of 32.
Yeah, he's extremely important just for their offensive ceiling. They're a really good defensive team, but they're not very good offensively without him. So, Kansas in that one.
Yeah. And then Oregon VCU. I have Oregon winning this. This is not Shaka Smart's VCU teams, but this is still a team that makes this a very, very, I guess, tough pick. What are you thinking?
You probably lean towards Chris Duarte on this one and Oregon getting it done. I like Dana Altman when it comes to this time of the year. Yep. He's shown the ability to win in March, so lean towards Oregon on this one.
Yeah, and then we're going to pencil in Iowa into the round of 32. So then
Michigan.
So then snaking back up, we're going to finish off this region, kind of just run it all the way through and then move on to one of the other ones. So Oregon, Iowa. Oregon, Iowa. Who do you have there?
I know Iowa can be a frustrating team, and generally speaking, this season they've kind of shown what we thought they were going to be in the Big Ten, not capable of winning it because of the defense. But the defense has actually gotten a little bit better. They've kind of snuck up in the KenPom rankings there. Iowa's going to win this one.
Yep. And then I have the same, even though I would admit that I was trying to figure out how to have a Fran McCaffrey Iowa team exit earlier than people expected, but I couldn't really justify it just this early on. But and then Kansas USC. Who do you have here? I actually have USC. If Wilson can't come back, I, like you said, kind of for the last game where you got to kind of rely on NBA talent at this point. Evan Mobley's a guy that I could see single-handedly carrying him to 2 wins. What are you thinking with this game?
Again, if David McCormick's playing, I would lean Kansas. They're a top 6 defense in KenPom. I know that they have, again, had some ups and downs in part of this season, but I thought they kind of started putting it together towards the end. Kansas is my pick as long as he's a go. If he isn't, I think that they're going to be in trouble in the front court.
Okay, so then next up we have Virginia, and then the winner of Creighton, UC Santa Barbara. I know we differed on that pick, but I'm assuming we're having Virginia move on, regardless of who we have them matching up against in this game, or is that not correct?
That's where I'd lean.
Okay, yep. And then Gonzaga versus Missouri. I have Gonzaga. I'm assuming you have Gonzaga.
Yeah, and Gonzaga wins the next one against Virginia as well.
Yep, I have the same thing. And then I actually have USC once again beating Iowa. This was just one of those things in my head where I just can't see myself picking Iowa to make it to an Elite Eight in an NCAA tournament. That's just something that I couldn't see myself doing. Like, I'm honestly not sure if USC is even in this game. Like, Kansas could easily be in this game, but I just couldn't see myself penciling Iowa in for another round. What did you do for this pick?
Yeah, I'm going to go Iowa still. And again, I'm not a huge Fran McCaffrey fan by any measure, but end of the day, I think it's going to be Gonzaga and Iowa facing off again for that rematch. I'm actually kind of excited to see it. It was at least an aesthetically pleasing offensive game, and I think we get to see it again. So
yeah. And then actually Gonzaga, Virginia, I believe, is also a rematch. So the committee kind of didn't really mix things up here and gave Gonzaga a couple of rematches possibly on the way to the Final Four.
Yeah, do you think it's an advantage Gonzaga, or do you think it's an advantage the teams that get to see them again and maybe just get a little bit used to the style? I'm not sure what the answer.
That's actually a good question. I honestly thought that at first I thought that Gonzaga would just cruise through, but then at the end of the day, you can't really make that determination because you don't really know who's going. I would still say it's advantage Gonzaga because at the end of the day, I'll give Mark Few the advantage when it comes to making these kind of adjustments and like looking back on the tape. But there's not really, yeah, I wouldn't say it's really that determinant of an advantage for either side. What do you kind of think on that?
I think that Iowa actually played a relatively decent game. I saw there's like a Twitter account out there that talks about quality of shots. I can't remember what the name of it is, but it was interesting. And I stumbled on it like after this game. And they basically said that Iowa got better quality of shots than Gonzaga did. They just didn't hit them. Do I think Iowa's going to beat them? No. But I do think that maybe that'll be interesting and maybe favor towards Iowa if that game does happen again.
Okay. So we're gonna move down into the East region now. I'm assuming we're gonna slot Michigan into the next round.
Yes.
Okay, so LSU St. Bonaventure. What are we thinking here?
Yeah, I think LSU's going that way, and then obviously Michigan beats them there. So,
Yep. Okay, so I have the same for that, and I also have Michigan beating LSU in the next round. Though I will admit that was a game that I thought quite a bit about. Like we were kind of talking earlier, LSU's defense is pretty abysmal. The only thing that kind of gave me pause was in the Ken Palm's top 8 adjusted offensive efficiency teams. 7 of them are 1 or 2 seeds in this tournament. The one team that's not a top 2 seed is 8 seed LSU. Kind of sticks out like a sore thumb for me of like where they're kind of seated compared to what their capability is on one dimension of the game. Again, you got to be somewhat competent at defense to actually make a run, but kind of gave me some pause for a second there in that round of 32 game. But hopping back down into the round of 64 here, still in the same region, Colorado, Georgetown. I want to say this is probably one of my hardest, I guess, choices to make here in the first round. What are you going with here?
I can't pretend like I've watched a ton of Pac-12. Obviously, I saw, the surge that Georgetown had to make it. I mean, there's some momentum that carries from that, but I believe Colorado's old again this year, aren't they? Don't they have quite a bit of upperclassmen? I always kind of lean that way, particularly in March. But I can't pretend like I know a ton about Colorado.
Yeah, their 2 best players are seniors, and that kind of goes with how you would expect it to go with the formula. They don't turn the ball over a lot, and they have like good shot selection.
Are they both in the backcourt?
That I'm not sure, but I know McKinley Wright and Jariah Horn are the 2 guys to watch for. I can't really say I know their positioning.
Yeah, but McKinley's I think as a lead guard, and then I pulled up on SRB, whatever, CBB, and he looks like he's a forward. So, yeah, that one could probably go either way. I'm going to lean Colorado. I think Georgetown was a little bit of a fluke to be able to get to where they were. To be honest.
Yeah. I believe that if Colin Gillespie's not hurt for Villanova, we're not even talking about Georgetown right now. So that kind of factor alone for me kind of excluded them from choosing them to win. But that momentum that they had with those 4 wins in 4 days still made me think about this one quite a bit. Next up, we have Florida State, UNC Greensboro. I have Florida State penciled in there.
Yep, I do as well. I've heard that Greensboro is actually a somewhat decent team this year, but I would assume that Florida State would probably overwhelm them with athletes. So,
yeah, that's probably true. And then next up, we got
the play, and now here we are, right where we wanted to be.
So, yep. So first, we'll touch on the play-in game before we get to the actual game in the bracket. MSU UCLA. I have MSU. Who do you have here?
Yeah, I have MSU. This one's going to be really, really interesting because UCLA has a trio of wings. They don't have a ton of guards. Tiger Campbell is a guy that Michigan State recruited in 2018. He visited a couple times unofficially. They never offered him. I described it tonight and just generally in the article that I'm writing for the preview. If you want to kind of look into a crystal ball and see maybe what AJ Hoggard's like floor is, the bottom of what I think he will be as an upperclassman, Tiger Campbell's kind of it. He shoots below 25% from three. Hopefully that's not the case long-term from Hoggard, obviously. He's only 5'11". Obviously Hoggard's 6'3", more physical, a little bit more athletic. But the way that Tiger Campbell's been able to organize and run the team, he's got like a 5.3 to like 2 assist turnover ratio. He's a guy that plays really poised. He's patient. He can score inside. And he's one of those guys that just generally, like I said, leads the team, kind of organizes the offense. And if Hoggard can get to that spot eventually and just be in a position where he doesn't have to do anything flashy, just takes care of the ball and runs the team, Michigan State will be in a better spot. Obviously, I think Akins is going to be extremely exciting too, and we won't get too much into that. But generally speaking, Tiger Campbell, interesting. 3 wing players that they have. Jules Bernard is a lefty, 6'6". All 3 guys are 6'6". Jaime Jaquez is 6'6", 220. He's kind of an undersized power forward that they run out there. He can shoot the 3. He can score at 3 levels. And the third guy is Johnny Juzang, who's from Kentucky, the transfer. So they have kind of a combination of 3 guys that can all put the ball in the bucket from basically all 3 levels of the court. And Michigan State is going to have to do a good job kind of making both Tiger Campbell and the big men, both who are kind of a little more undersized, be the focal part of the offense. If they're able to do that, I think they're in a good position to win. Obviously, Aaron Henry has to be, what we saw from the Ohio State and Illinois and just kind of peak Henry to win. But I don't think that there's really a guy that can bottle him up on UCLA. So I think the good part of this matchup is that if Aaron Henry plays to the caliber he is, I think he can carry the day for Michigan State.
Yeah, I think I do. I wouldn't say easily, but this was kind of a pick that I thought that Michigan State could probably win more times than not if you were kind of to run a repeated simulation. If UCLA hadn't lost the last 4 games, including the last game to Oregon State, I might have a different perception of them in my mind. And maybe I'm putting too much focus on this whole who comes into the tournament hot theory. But I just feel like a UCLA team that's lost 4 in a row versus a Michigan State team that's beaten 3 top 5 teams in the span of 2 weeks at one point. That's just, I can't see myself picking UCLA to win, even though I don't like the fact that they have 3 different guys that can score from the perimeter. Langford's going to have to play better than he's played on the last 2 weeks, especially on the defensive end, even if he's not going to score. If Rocket can actually start consistently going downhill like he did in the Michigan win, he can start tiring out those UCLA guards too. And I feel like that'll open up kind of more for our offense. And then also they won't be able to attack as much from the perimeter. They're going to start getting lazy. I just see Michigan State winning this game, but they're going to have to play better than they did in the last couple of weeks. Even in some of those wins, I didn't like the fact that not all 3-4 perimeter guys are pouring it on. Kind of need, if Rocket and Henry can start being, I guess Henry's always been consistent, but if Rocket can bring the consistency and just his approach, even if he's missing some of these layups, I just want to see him almost predeterminately say, I'm going to attack the rim right when I get the ball. Even though that's probably not a smart idea in a large sample size, just seeing that like personality from him would just go a long way for me. And if he can do that, and maybe either Gabe Brown or Josh Langford can put together like 13, 15 points, I think that should be enough to get it done.
I agree with that. And just touching briefly on the Josh Langford thing, the staff really kind of rode him into the ground. Mm-hmm. And I thought he should have probably played closer to 20 minutes per game. In conference play, he was just under 30. It was like 28.5. So they really played his legs off. I didn't think it was smart kind of coming into it. The last 6 games, he shot under 30% from the field. He's shooting 19%. It's like 4 for 21 from deep. That cannot be your second scorer. Yep. And defensively, he's really looked slow. When I went back and watched the Michigan film and then again this Maryland game, he was getting beat in the help side. He was getting beat off the ball. Yep. If he's not capable of giving you more defensively, They really need to make the decision to play Gabe Brown, because
Mhm.
even when Gabe Brown plays inconsistent, he's always going to be a threat from deep, and he's
Yep.
an athlete. He is, and I just think the way that the staff has handled the Brown and Langford split has been pretty bad all year. But really coming down to this game, if he's not playing well and he doesn't look like he has his legs under him, the staff needs to tap in longer stretches of Brown and sit Langford. And the one worry I have kind of coming into this is the staff has showed a complete unwillingness to do that during the course of the season. And do you really trust in a spot like this, in a must-win game, that Izzo's not going to play him 30 minutes? So if we get in a situation where he's getting beat and he's not playing well and he plays the full 30 minutes, that is something that worries me a little bit heading into this. But I agree with you. I think if they play up to the best they can, Michigan State should win this.
Yeah. And then I think another thing is, like, Michigan State finally got a few days off here. So I'm hoping the Langford thing was kind of just a fatigue thing there. And I'm kind of hoping that's not how his legs are going to be here in this game. So that's kind of another reason why I was kind of feeling a little hopeful about that.
The only reason why I complained about the draw that they got is that they didn't get the extra 2 days to maybe get a little bit more leg. That was what I cared about more than the fact that, Syracuse doesn't have quite the wins, all the rest of it. We didn't really put ourselves in a position to complain about being in or not at this point. We were lucky to be in. They did what they needed to do down the stretch to be able to get there. So the only thing I had to complain about was that Josh didn't get an extra 2 days for his legs. So
yeah. So if they win that game, like we're expecting them to, they'll be facing off against BYU. I know BYU, everyone's kind of remembering how they gave Gonzaga a scare here recently. But to be honest with you, that's really kind of the only thing that I see in a positive light for BYU kind of when analyzing this matchup. The other 2 times they also lost to Gonzaga, so they had 3 shots at them. They finally made it close the 3rd time. They don't really have any big time wins. They lost to USC by almost 30, I want to say. They did beat Utah State, who's in the field. I want to say they also beat San Diego State. So they've shown some flashes, but this is not a team that has played competition like an Ohio State, Illinois, and Michigan in the span of a couple weeks and beaten 3 of them. At the end of the day, that's what I'm going to look at more than them challenging Gonzaga that one time. So I have Michigan State winning. What do you think in this BYU MSU matchup?
I think probably athletically it clearly advantages Michigan State, just the way that it's set up. Across the board, they probably have an advantage at almost every position in that regard. They're a good 3-point shooting team. So that's always a little bit of a scare, but Michigan State actually this year, the one stat that they really have excelled in is the ability to kind of shut down perimeter shooting from deep. So I think that matchup probably favors Michigan State. And for how much we complained about it, if they can get past UCLA, I would probably rather play BYU than San Diego State myself. Yep. And I think, long story short, it doesn't matter so much if you get past this first one. Maybe we got a better draw in the long run for having had to play the playing game. So,
yeah, definitely. So then we'll move down to Texas. Abilene Christian, I'm assuming that's Texas all the way.
Yes.
So then we have 7 seed UConn versus 10 seed Maryland. Michigan State fans had a chance to look at Maryland closely here a couple times. I know that Maryland kind of scares some MSU fans. Some MSU fans might put Maryland into the next round because of what we've seen recently. I've seen Maryland play quite a few times, especially when they played against Penn State. Penn State swept them this year. Maryland has looked very bad at times, and they've looked very good at times. Actually, one of their losses to Penn State was either to snap their 7-game win streak, or it was right after the Northwestern game that snapped that win streak. But so it was in the part of the season where Maryland was looking their best, where they completely fell flat against Penn State. I don't have a lot of faith in Maryland. I know they've beaten Michigan State, but that's not going to be enough for me to think they're going to come out and also beat a lot of these NCAA tournament teams, because Michigan State is frankly very inconsistent. I have UConn winning this game. What do you think, DK?
It's interesting that you bring up kind of who they've beaten, because if you look at UConn, they beat USC early on in the year when they weren't quite what they were towards the end. And the Big East really had a terrible stretch to kind of end the season. How many teams did they end up getting in?
I'm not sure. Not too many. And I know Villanova
Nova,
took a huge
Creighton,
fall.
Georgetown. Was there any other? Because Xavier was around there. They didn't get in.
Xavier didn't get in. Seton Hall didn't get in.
I think that honestly, it was three of them, right? And Georgetown wouldn't have got in without it.
Correct. Yeah.
Maybe we're forgetting somebody in there in the mix, but it was a down year for the conference across the board. I mean, you look at it, and the best win that they had in conference was against Seton Hall, who's at 52 and didn't make the tournament. You know? So I'm a little bit, I think the competition level for Maryland was there. I think that they've had an identity the whole season. I mean, James Bouknight for UConn is the best player on the floor. And if he gets hot, all bets are off. But if they can contain him a little bit and Morcell's able to do his job on the defensive end, I'm going to lean Big Ten this year because I think it was a brutal year for the conference, as competitive as it's been in a decade. And, they played a lot of grindy games and won on the road. I think they can beat a UConn team that hasn't really played the caliber of teams.
Yeah, I can definitely see that angle, because one thing I ask myself is, would UConn be in the NCAA tournament if they were in the Big Ten? I don't know if I could have definitively said yes to that question. I guess it was more so of me putting too much investment in how I've seen Maryland play at their lowest, particularly the 2 games against Penn State. But I can definitely get behind that argument of Maryland's more battle tested than UConn is by far. So I can definitely see that going that way. And then Alabama beating Slick Rick and Iona there, I'm assuming.
Yeah, that's at least an interesting matchup, though. Nobody's really talked about that too much, but Rick Pitino comes back to college basketball and gets his team into the tournament his first year. I mean, say what you want about who he is as a person. I think he coaches a hell of I mean, he's one of the top 5 coaches in college basketball in this last decade or whatever. He just wins. So however you want to say how you personally feel about him. I think Alabama overwhelms them, just the talent that they have, definitely. But maybe that's more of a game than we thought, just because the coaching kind of wills it that way. So I'm curious to see that.
I know, I don't know if you saw or not, but this morning, Pitino said that you could offer me the best job in America and I wouldn't leave it. I wouldn't take it to leave Iona.
Dude, his quotes are great.
But we'll see.
Right. He loves to win and he loves the money. So I think if he finds the right job, if Indiana came calling, he would bag on both knees to take that job.
Even if someone like UNLV starts giving serious consideration, I don't think he takes it with how strong of a wording he gave, but definitely an Indiana level school. I don't see him turning down Indiana to keep coaching at Iona, but we'll see.
How about New Mexico just doubling down on baby Pitino? And they're like, you know what?
12 hours
done at Minnesota. It's been nothing but, great runs and successful ends to the season. And they didn't even wait. They snatched him up literally hey.
As if there was a line out the door to hire Richard Pitino or something. They locked him up in 12 hours because
there's no way we can let this man go a day without it.
Maybe they read the name wrong on the application.
Yeah, that's exactly right. They thought the wrong one applied for the
job. But so there's the round of 64 in this East region. So we already touched on Michigan versus LSU. We both have Michigan advancing there. Colorado, Florida State. I have Florida State. This is also one that a lot of people had trouble deciding on. What are you thinking? I know we talked about earlier how Leonard Hamilton doesn't have us convinced that he can make a huge run.
I just don't trust him. I don't think he's a tactician. He's not an in-game coach. He recruits well. I think the talent's there and he develops guys. I mean, he gets a ton of guys to the NBA. So not always a mark of a successful coach is just that. I mean, you see what, Calipari does. He's blatantly come out and just said, I don't care about, winning in March all the time so much as I do about getting these guys to the next level. So Leonard Hamilton's been very successful in that, but tournament wise and with what some of he has, sometimes he has a ton of just athletic talent on there. And it doesn't always come into shape, particularly in March. So I don't trust him. I'll say that. But I do think that they get to the next round to see Michigan.
Okay. So then we have in the next game below that, MSU versus Texas. Unfortunately,
I kind of hope we see this. I won't
Me
lie,
too.
because I think Texas has been a lot of fun to watch. I don't know if you've gotten to get your eyes on them at all, but
I've seen them twice. I saw them play against Cade Cunningham, and then I think I
yeah,
saw one of their games in the middle of February.
pretty decent veteran backcourt. Obviously, quite a bit of athletic talent on the wings.
Yep.
So I think that would be a really fun matchup. I would obviously lean Texas probably on
Yeah.
this. I think
Yeah.
I just think that they have more talent when you match it up, and I'm not quite sure how Michigan State would handle some of the matchups.
Yeah, I think with Andrew Jones, Coleman, and Ramey, those guys, you kind of know what you're gonna get from them. And that's like a three-headed monster that you can kind of count on a little more than Henry. And whoever the second best player decides to show up that day, and whoever the third best player decides to randomly show up on that day, I just can't, like, when you start comparing the Michigan State top level talent versus Texas, I feel like Texas is just more consistent. Yes, if Rocket plays his second best game of the season up close to that Michigan level, and if Langford plays his best game in the last month, could
Right.
Michigan State win? Definitely. But those are if statements that I am not confident enough in to put them over a Texas team that I think would win if they play their usual game.
I'll just say this. I think that probably if Michigan State got to that point, it would be considered for me a successful
Correct.
postseason for that. Obviously, I didn't like the way that they flaked out in the Big Ten tournament.
Mm-hmm.
I would have probably preferred them to just win that game, especially when the first 10 minutes they looked like, a team that could beat basically anyone in the country, and then they just completely floundered. But I would say generally, when Greg Brown has to be your fourth best player on your team, I think that you're probably in a pretty good position. And I think that we're going to end up seeing that Texas-Alabama matchup. I think that's got to be one of the more underrated matchups we could potentially see in kind of that situation. So I kind of hope that we get that. Obviously, Michigan State makes it, fantastic, but I would be surprised. So leaning Texas on that one for sure.
Yeah, same. So I guess jumping into the next round there, Texas, Alabama, that you just touched on. Who do you have winning that?
Yeah.
I have Nate Oaks. Who do you have winning that?
Oh, I would lean Nate too. The only team that won both the tournament and the regular season this year. What he's been able to do at a non-traditional basketball program in such a short span. Obviously, the money down there probably helps, and who knows how the recruiting is going one way or the other. I think the SEC of any of the basketball schools are starting to get some help from the football programs to be able to ensure these kids are coming there. So that's a story for a different day. But recruiting wise, he's starting to hit it out of the park. He's put together a team. He's completely adopted the threes and layups philosophy. They practice specifically that points are less at the 2-point range in the long two.
Yep.
That's how he sets up the practices. So I think it's an interesting approach, and I would lean Alabama on that one over Texas.
I'm not gonna pick against the unofficial Izzo disciple in Nate Oaks with him and his car rides up from Romulus to East Lansing, learning from our guy Tom Izzo. But no,
is that what happened? I didn't actually know that. I knew he was in Romulus.
So what would happen is so I don't know how he originally.
This is a good story because I don't think a lot of people know this. I didn't know this.
Yeah,
there's a loose connection with Michigan, but I didn't know there was actually a connection.
So when he was a high school math teacher, I want to say, and obviously the basketball coach at Romulus, he would drive up to East Lansing, quote, every single chance he got. That's what he told the Lansing State Journal, I want to say, a couple years ago. Or no, actually, I think this was actually in an interview he gave after he was hired at Alabama. But he said that he would come up to Michigan State almost every chance he got. And Izzo would welcome him in hotel walkthroughs. He would welcome him at practices. And basically, he got to hang around the Michigan State program. And he said he was, quote, very involved in an unofficial capacity during his time here. So he considers Izzo basically his greatest influence, his mentor. And he was pretty hands-on with this Michigan State program. I don't know if it was for a few years or if it was for 1 year, but he was very, very established and kind of being familiar at these practices in East Lansing.
Well, that is news to me, and I like that. There's been some chatter among the fan base.
Yep.
What is the time span for Izzo's next whatever? It'll be interesting for me to see, because I think he's going to always want to chase that Moby Dick, that white whale, and get that second one. I think it's just been like he's been thinking about it. He goes to sleep thinking about it. So how many years is he going to continue to pursue it? But like 4 to 5 years down the way, maybe there's he's in a spot where he feels comfortable moving. Hopefully we've won one for Lord's sake, and all the fan base. If we've got one in the next 5 years, he can retire off into the sunset. But Nate Oates has got to be high up on the list for a lot of programs kind of looking at the next transition. And that gives me a little bit more hope that maybe they can try to lure him back to Michigan.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like if he goes ahead and he wins a little bit at Alabama, he won't feel like he's actually kind of abandoned the team, that the first P5 team that gave him a shot. But at the same time, like if Izzo decides to hang it up once this 2021 class is matriculated all the way through the program, giving him another 4 or 5 years, I feel like that's probably the timeline I would expect Izzo to retire at. And by
that's
then,
where I lean as well.
Yeah. So by then, Oates would have given Alabama a solid 4, 5, 6 years. And I feel like that's where he might be looking for his home for like the next 15, 20 years if he is a college basketball lifer. And I can see that those pieces falling together. But the other question is, if Juwan Howard goes to the NBA and he's destined to come back to the state of Michigan, does he take the Michigan job? Just a whole lot of possibilities that way. If he wants,
I think Juwan's on a similar track, to be honest with you, because the kids are coming through the program. I think he's going to want to be a part of that. So, it's one of those situations where maybe after Jace goes through, right? Jace is the oldest one.
Correct. Yeah. I believe so.
Or the youngest, right? Is Jace the oldest?
Jace is the one that's the actual, not the actual, I don't want to say, but like he's the one that has the scholarship offer. He's the one that's heavily recruited, I believe. And then I believe the walk-on son is already there. I do believe Jace is the name of the, I want to say 4-star recruit. But so I guess just wrapping up this game real quick. Yeah. So joking aside with Nate Oates being the unofficial Izzo disciple here, like you said, Alabama basically operates like a math equation here on the offensive end with the 3-point valuation, and they lead the SEC in 3-point field goals made. They also have 4 guys averaging double figures. Those are the kind of teams I always look for in March, where if 1 or 2 guys are cold, are there other people that can carry the load? I have Alabama beating Texas here. If it's a close game, I think that might be troublesome for Alabama because they're not a great free throw shooting team, but I think they'll be up about 8 or 9 points when it gets to that crunch time part of the game. So then we have Alabama, or actually no, cycling up to the Sweet 16 in that same region, Michigan, Florida State. We both kind of said we don't trust Leonard Hamilton. The other thing I don't trust is me having Michigan go 3-0 without Isaiah Livers, assuming he's not back. And I don't think he will be, but can you see yourself having Michigan go 3-0 without Isaiah Livers? I don't think I can.
If it's FSU versus Michigan, I think that they can win that. Yes.
Okay.
I do. I think they can make an Elite 8, and then it starts getting really interesting. I just like, who do you think is definitively going to be able to beat them out of that grouping? Like, do you really trust FSU that much that they're going to beat them even down?
I do not. I actually have. This is the part of the bracket I've changed the most. The very first time I went ahead and did the draft of this, I had them losing 1 to 16. No, I'm just kidding. But I had LSU beating them in the second round, and then I started to take away emphasis from how great they are at offense and like looking more into their defensive flaws. I ended up changing that. Then I had Michigan in the second kind of draft I did. I had Michigan beating LSU and then Florida State. And that's when I started to explore the Isaiah Livers angle even more. And I'm thinking I'm just forcing Michigan to the Final Four, thinking or the Elite 8, thinking they're the same team I saw all year, not counting the fact that Isaiah Livers is a guy they really can't win without in a large sample size. So it was more so me forcing the concept of them not being able to make an Elite 8 without Isaiah Livers, as opposed to logically saying this team matches up good enough where they can beat them head to head. So
are you changing your opinion in the middle of this now?
I will be changing my opinion on Michigan's path until the very first game of the NCAA tournament tips off. But for
I
I
think
might
that
have
they
to.
can make an Elite Eight.
Okay. I
Yeah,
might have to watch like 4 or 5 FSU games in the next day or two and then really decide. But for now, I have
okay.
FSU in 8.
That's fair. That's fair. And for the record, and just for the podcast records, Jet Howard is the incoming top 50 kid. I've watched him at IMG. I couldn't remember if it was Chase. Chase is already on the team.
Okay.
So it's Jet coming in.
Okay.
That's the 22 class.
Yeah. So, and then I'm assuming we both have Alabama advancing into the Final Four out of this region, regardless of if they play against Michigan or Florida State, or is that not true?
Yeah, that one's gonna be good, but this is the one where I actually avoided the chalk, and not by much, but I lean Alabama coming out of this. Yeah.
Yep. And me as well. I actually thought Alabama was the 3rd best team in the entire tournament. So gonna have them go to the Final Four here, and I do think they can beat Michigan, even if Michigan is the team.
I hope that's the case, because I put a little money on them making the Final Four, like middle through the season. I watched them a couple times and like, yeah, that's a decent. I can't remember what I got it at. I have to look. Yeah, like 650 to something. So
yeah, I think that'll be a good pick. Plus, I think Javon Cornerly has started to play well as of late. I want to say he was even the SEC tournament most outstanding player of the tournament. I want to say he started out kind of slow. I believe he transferred in from Villanova 2 years ago, sat out last year. If they can kind of add him to the fold and he keeps playing at the level he played at in this tournament, they might go further than a Final Four. But I don't know. We'll have to see how consistently he can hold up. Okay, so swinging to the bottom right, we'll kind of try to run through this a little faster, maybe not give so much analysis.
Moving slow. It's my fault.
No. I wanted to chat about Nate Oakes and his Romulus to East Lansing drives, but so we'll start at we'll go up to the top right. We'll start at the South region. We have Baylor, Hartford. Yeah,
Baylor UNC is where I'm going for the first two.
So I had Baylor.
You're putting any stock in Wisconsin, what they've looked like in the conference.
So the thing is,
they're an abomination. Michigan broke them. Nate Reavers and Michael Potter were playing together and starting. They played Michigan. They completely abandoned it because Michigan abused it. And it was like, that was your one advantage of the year. Just because one team exploits you, you shouldn't just change what made you decent. And they stopped playing beside each other like a pick and pop tandem. They can both post up. That was their one advantage that they had on their roster, and they completely blew it. And honestly, there's no way. I think North Carolina destroys them inside.
Yes. So looking at it that way, I can agree. Here's where my issue comes in is UNC. I know we've applied this logic to other teams in other conferences, but UNC has played in an ACC that has not been very good. And as a result, I'll go through the notable results that they have listed on their ESPN little blurb here. Iowa lost by 12, Virginia lost by 12, Texas lost by 2, Clemson lost by 13, Georgia Tech lost by 5, Duke won twice, Virginia Tech won by 8, Florida State lost once, lost twice, and then beat them a third time. Frankly, they've got to start beating some teams before I can have them beating like a senior laden team like Wisconsin. At the same time, Wisconsin's definitely a fraud. They've been disappointing. I feel like if you give most coaches these guys at this age of their career, they finished way higher in the Big Ten than Greg Gard had them finishing. I would never have Wisconsin winning more than one game in this tournament, even if Baylor wasn't there. But UNC to me just screams fraud for some reason. And
I think they're both frauds. Yeah. I think that UNC has way better athletes, and that's where
This is true.
Their front court, they have 4 guys in their front court. Each one of their centers could basically start on almost every team in the country, minus like a few exceptions. Mm-hmm. Like ridiculous amount of front court depth. I think they just throw bodies in waves at Wisconsin, and there's nobody that's going to be able to stop them. I don't know what that line's going to be, but I will definitely take a friendly wager if you want to lean Wisconsin. Anyway, we can bet like a case of beer or something, a burger and a bite. I'm totally down for taking that one because I think North Carolina's going to murder them. I really do.
I might have Wisconsin winning this game, but no chance I have Wisconsin. I ever wager something in favor of Greg Gard when the stakes are high.
Stakes are that high. I know are you still in college?
I am. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, that's fine. I'll just come up and buy you a burger.
No. Stakes high. Stakes being high, meaning the NCAA tournament being what Greg Gard is coaching for, and not stakes of our bet being high. I can't see Greg Gard winning something meaningful, especially with the roster he had. I don't know how you finished that low in the Big Ten.
I'm with you.
Yeah. But Villanova Winthrop. I actually grew up a Villanova fan for the longest time. Back when the Scotty Reynolds, Corey Fisher, Malik Wayne's days were happening.
Yeah. One team to root for.
Yeah. Villanova is not.
Their offense is just aesthetically like it's pleasurable.
Yeah.
There's not very much pleasurable offensive basketball in the entire country, and they're one team every year. You can
as John Rothstein says, Villanova basketball, a Fortune 500 company. They are not the same Villanova team though when Colin Gillespie's out, and I think Justin Moore is also banged up. They're going to be relying very, very heavily on Jeremiah Robinson Earl. They will beat Winthrop, I think, but I don't think this is going to be one of those years where Jay Wright's out by the first tournament, and not one of those years where he raises a banner.
So I would lean towards obviously seeing the Villanova-Purdue matchup in that. Didn't that happen just recently in the tournament, or am I mistaken? Did they see each other at some point in time? I almost want to look back on that because I feel like that's a somewhat familiar matchup, and they maybe saw each other within the last 3 years or so.
I want to say that was the very last tournament that happened. I think I remember Carson Edwards playing against Villanova and beating them by quite a bit. Let's see. Yeah, March 23rd, 2019. So the last tournament that happened, it was Purdue 87, Villanova 61.
Yeah, they murdered them. Oh my God.
26 points. And
that's the thing nobody ever talks about. Like, they want to give Izzo shit for not like getting the second title. And I get it. Like, everybody's ready for it. But Jay Wright has flamed out so many more times, and he won 2 and 3 years, and he deserves all the credit. Like, whatever.
Yeah.
If he wins another one, goat him. That's fine.
Yeah.
Like, did he just catch like some magic in the bottle, or is he going to be able to keep them at the top? Because he's been like an early flame out more often than he's been the guy that you would really put your money on to be able to win the whole thing.
So I have the stat on that. Jay Wright in the last decade, in the last 10 tournaments, he has made it out of the first weekend twice. Both of those years he won a national title. So he either in the last decade.
What was that? Throw that out one more time.
2 times in the last 10 tournaments, Villanova has made it out of the first weekend. So passed the round of 32.
Holy shit.
Both years he won a national title. Every other year, Villanova fans have their March end earlier, much earlier than most of the other teams.
Wow.
In their echelon. So
that's a crazy stat.
Yeah. So I guess it could be a lengthy debate of would you rather have 2 titles and a lot of flameouts? Would you have 1 title and celebrate a Final Four every few years? I don't know. That's a long debate people could have, but
just win the second one and then it's the cherry on the top.
It's over. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess that brings us into the bottom half of this bracket. We said Purdue is going to be moving on, beating North Texas. Texas Tech, Utah State. I have Chris Beard moving on here, but this is a Utah State team that some experts are predicting to win this game.
Really?
I want to say that both Jerry Palm and
does Utah State's got that guy who's like completely bald and he just goes out and he shoots the shit out of the ball.
I am not sure, but I do know that they have a dude that averages a double-double with rebounds. So if Texas Tech starts,
I don't think it's the white ball guy I'm thinking of.
But yeah, so I want to say Jerry Palm and Matt Norlander. I want to say both of them were high in Utah State, but I can't see myself picking against Chris Beard when the last time he played coached in the NCAA tournament, he was in the national title game, and that defense is pretty good. Not the same as last year, but I have Texas Tech winning. Who do you have?
Yep, TT.
Okay.
I'm a Chris Beard fan generally.
Yeah.
If somehow Michigan State in 4 to 5 years had him on their short list and he'd consider it, he would be right up there with me with Nate Oates, I think.
Yeah, definitely. definitely. He'll have that really, really good defense, but without having you fall asleep on the offensive end like
Yeah,
Tony
hopefully not. Do you think that Indiana's going to be able to actually land a reasonable candidate? Because there's been a couple names linked. Chris Beard's one, Scott
I
Drew,
I think that
John
all of
Beeline, which I think is a long shot. But
yeah, I think all of those candidates are kind of like the same kind of scope that Michigan football always has for like their football candidates. Anytime they start talking about Harbaugh being fired, they're not those guys are not leaving a Texas Tech or like these kind of programs to come coach at Indiana. Now, don't get me wrong, Indiana might have more resources. I know they're a blue blood, I guess, but the thing
Chris
is
Beard
that
gets paid a lot, and I think his buyout is huge. His
yeah,
buyout,
I want to say it's 22 million, unless I'm mistaking
it's
him
a
for another
big
coach.
buyout. Yep.
Yeah. So I don't think those coaches will leave, not because Indiana's a worse off program, but they've won elsewhere.
They
So
are a
like,
worse
why do
off
they
program.
need
Just
to?
say it right
Okay.
here now. They're completely a worse off program, and there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with saying.
Yeah.
Baylor has one of the best incoming 2021 classes, like in maybe in their history of the basketball program, but they're a top 3 or top 5 class coming in next year for basketball.
Yeah.
He's done a really, really nice job building the program from the ground up.
Yeah. Plus, my thing is like, there's coaches out there that have won at these places where they built them up and they've maintained it for like 2 decades. Like, I know we were just dissing on Jay Wright, but like, if you can win at Villanova, win 2 titles there, and have like a few runs, even though it's been a while, I guess. But if you can do that, why do you need Indiana to be a lifer in college basketball? Why can't you coach at Texas Tech for 20 years or Baylor for 20 years? Like, I don't see the need for them to use
100%. How much does the fan base love you for like raising a program from the dead to bring it back? The gratification of just doing that and then winning in a place that you probably shouldn't be. I mean, I think I said Baylor right now is going to be in a position where consistently, maybe not next year because I think they lose quite a bit, but consistently, like every 2 years, I think that they're going to be challenging Kansas for a Big 12 title. And I think that was unthinkable like 5 or 6 years ago. Kansas was just running through that league, and all of a sudden you blinked and the Big 12 is actually one of the better conferences in a better spot with coaching and all the rest of it than they've been in a long time. Texas Tech, Baylor, Kansas, like there's a lot of quality teams.
Yep, for sure. But yeah, you asked me about Indiana. I think if they're smart, they'll go get a coach that's a mid-major coach. Like, can't remember his first name, but last name is Gates. He used to be the associate head coach under Leonard Hamilton at Florida State. He was instrumental in some of the recruiting successes. Then he came and took this job. It might be Cleveland State's coach, I want to say. He turned this team from a 4-win team, lost all of their key players through the portal when he got hired, rebuilt that team from scratch through the portal and recruits, and in 2 years took them from a 4-loss team to an NCAA tournament team with 4 losses. That's the kind of program builder. If I'm Indiana, that's who I would target. Issue is donors might not pay up for.
I 100%, and I think that they want the big sexy name.
Yep.
Find a big fish in a small pond that's proven that he's been able to take the steps necessary to win at multiple programs that he shouldn't. He came from the bottom somewhere and just rose up a program in a conference like that has reasonable basketball.
Yeah.
And that is what I think. You know who I thought of, and I know he just jumped, was the Virginia Tech guy. Is it Mike Young?
Yeah, from Wofford.
From Wofford, and then jumped to Virginia Tech. He got them in the tournament again this year. It's a couple years in a row. They would have got in last year as well.
Yep.
Like that program is a bottom of the barrel ACC team, and they've like come reasonably in the top half of the conference in back-to-back years, and that's not traditionally what they do. Like that, he's an interesting guy for me too. You got to find like I said, a guy who just is maybe a smaller fish in a big pond, or somebody who's a big fish in a small pond has proven it a couple times.
Yeah. But at the same time, I think what Iowa State just did today was a mistake. They hired UNLV's coach that was 29-30 at UNLV, who only landed that job because when he took over the North Dakota State job, he inherited Mike Daum, who basically carried him to all his success.
Yeah.
So
Mike Daum was awesome.
Yep. Yeah. So that's kind of a hire I feel like Iowa State just got wrong today. I believe they only took 24 hours to hire this guy from UNLV.
What is the rush? I don't understand this at all. Or is the programs like they're so worried about it that they're going to just – Iowa State was a legit, like, exciting program with Fred Hoiberg.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they become like, I don't know.
Yep. Yeah. Not really sure what that hire was about or what the rush is in general, but Yeah, I guess if Indiana does go that route, don't go exactly the route that Iowa State just did. Make sure the guy won without inheriting one star player. Jumping back into this bracket, we have Arkansas and Colgate still here in the South region. I'm assuming we have Arkansas there, even though I know that line is down to, I want to say, -8 for Arkansas.
I heard that Colgate is an interesting pick in this one
Yeah.
too. I can't pretend like I know anything about Colgate besides
Hmm.
it being a toothpaste brand. So
Yep.
I'm going to lean Arkansas here. Moses Moody. I know that's going to be a catch name. I think he's a
Hmm.
stud. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah. The only thing I know about Colgate is I believe they were top 10 in net, and everybody was worried about hopefully they don't get too high of a seed
That's
just because of
right. They
that.
were like 13 in net.
Yeah. The only issue is they didn't play an opponent within the top 75 of net, and that's why they're a 14 seed. So I'm glad that was taken care of, even though the net was flawed in many other usages in this tournament. But that's really all I know about Colgate. So I'm gonna go ahead and take Eric Musselman and Arkansas to beat them. Florida, Virginia Tech. This is kind of one of those 7-10 toss-ups. Anytime Florida played against a really good team, like Alabama, I guess even Arkansas, even though not really good. Florida State, they lost by double digits. They're very fluky. At the same time, they beat West Virginia, they beat LSU, which is decent. I don't really have a strong conviction in either one of these teams winning this game. I will go ahead and say Florida. I think this is one of those cases of the better athletes kind of notion that we've used a couple times, even though I didn't use that in the North Carolina Wisconsin game. But so what do you have here? I have Florida.
Yeah, I have Florida as well. Obviously, hopefully Keontae Johnson's doing well. I thought that
Yeah.
this was a team that probably would have been maybe in like a tier 2 selection.
Hmm.
They looked kind of in the beginning part of the season where maybe they weren't quite a national title contender, but a team that you would definitely want to monitor as the season
Yeah.
continued. He was obviously a huge loss. Trey Mann has had a really nice season. He's a guy that maybe can carry a game.
Yep. I
So
believe.
I would lean towards probably Florida in this one.
Yeah. I believe man was mocked in the first round, at least at some point in the season. I don't know where he is right now. I haven't really monitored them down there, but I do believe that he's quite a legit of a pro prospect. And then we have Ohio State, Oral Roberts. I'm assuming we have Ohio State there, though Chris Holtman has tried to do his best to lose some games recently. Are we going to go ahead and
He's kind of been tough down the stretch. He's another hire that I thought was like a home run for
me
Ohio
too.
State, and I still believe that.
Yeah.
But he's had a couple seasons now. I think they did it 2 years ago when he was first hired, where they had a really nice season, then just kind of crumbled down the stretch.
Yep.
What year is this for him now? Is this fourth?
4. I want to say 4. I was looking at it last week.
He
Yeah, I wanna
turned
say.
what is it was
Oh,
Bates Diop into
oh yeah.
player of the year, right? He like
Yeah.
his first season.
Yeah.
And Jay Sean Tate, there was a lot of excitement there.
Hmm.
And then I don't know, he hasn't done as well as I thought he would in the
Yeah.
postseason thus far.
Yeah.
I think they returned basically everybody. I'm not sure what Kyle Young does if
Yeah.
he comes back with the extra year of eligibility, but if they ran that team back, I think that they would get a little bit better. I think Liddell will get maybe a little bit
Yeah.
better. As long as he stays, they're an
Yeah.
interesting team for me heading into next season with the Big Ten. I
Yeah.
think they're a top 3-4 team if they come back again.
Yeah. I have them penciled in all the way into a Sweet 16 here.
I do as well.
Yeah, so I guess we can just real quick touch on. So yeah, we have them beating Oral Roberts, and then we both have them beating Florida. I know that like we just said, Ohio State's been like shaky at the end of games recently, but at the end of the day, that was against like Illinois of the world, Michigan's of the world. So
Right. Yeah.
we won't hold it against them too much, but it's something
They
to
had a
watch
rough
for.
stretch. They just had a really tough schedule.
Exactly, yeah. So I guess the game right above them for how Ohio State's going to, or who they're going to play in the Sweet 16, we have Texas Tech, Arkansas. I was very tempted to choose Texas Tech again. Frankly, I don't know why I didn't, but who do you have?
I chose Texas Tech. I
Yeah.
mean, again, I think Beard's track record speaks for itself thus far. Musselman's done a nice job at Nevada, but
Yeah.
prior to coming over, but I'm going to lean towards Chris Beard. They don't have like a sexy scorer. Mac McClung for me isn't a primary option. I think he's more of like a secondary guy.
Yeah.
So the fact that sometimes they come down to the stretch and that's their best option, I don't really love that.
Yeah.
I thought that Terrence Shannon was going to take that step this year for them, but
yeah, this is kind of a game where it was very lazy analysis. And I said that Texas Tech kind of scares me because when they played the likes of Baylor, Houston, Kansas, they were 0-5.
What were the games though? Weren't they all pretty close for the most part?
Baylor and Kansas, I'm not sure, as it just says lost twice. Houston was an 11-point loss. And then West Virginia, they lost twice. So they got 2 swings at Oklahoma State. So they got to play Baylor, Oklahoma State, West Virginia, Houston a total of 7 times and went 0-7. I would have liked to have seen just 1 win, even if they were.
That's close. Fair.
So that was kind of my lazy analysis. And then I looked at, okay, Arkansas beat Alabama. So that alone has already given me more of a ceiling for them than Texas Tech.
Okay.
I'll have to look a little more into that, just like the Florida State Michigan game, but that's actually very interesting of a game. That'll be fun to watch.
I agree. I think that's another fun one. I hope that we eventually get it. I would say that regardless of what happens there, I would choose Ohio State over the next one.
Yeah.
I think Ohio State has some flaws, but I think that Liddell is just a really tough matchup for basically 90% of the country. I mean, he was a tough matchup for the Big Ten, let alone what he's going to enter into the tournament. There's not too many guys that have his size and can bang you a little bit in low and then just have how many 6'7", like 230-pound dudes can just shoot such a smooth mid-range.
Yeah.
So I think that I would lean Ohio State in that game, regardless if it ends up being Texas Tech or Arkansas.
Yeah, and then part of my issue was, since I don't know with confidence who it's going to be out of Texas Tech and Arkansas, I can't really justify having that team beat Ohio State in that game as well. So that kind of forces me to put Ohio State into that next round. I'm assuming against Baylor, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So just working backwards.
Do you think that the Baylor Purdue game, if we get that, is going to be at all any interesting? Purdue's kind of come on down the late stretch. I think that they're a year maybe ahead of schedule.
And Baylor's trending in the wrong direction as well at the same time after their COVID break. But I don't know.
I listened. I was in the locker room and Rob Doster was talking about that situation. He said that in 21 days they'd only practiced 1 time and then ran into a situation where they had to play all these games. So I think that maybe that gets a little bit figured out. But I think at least maybe Purdue can kind of give them an interesting game. Trevion Williams has been pretty good down the stretch for the Big Ten end. And I don't know. I think I'm excited to see it. I think the Big Ten and the Big 12 were 2 conferences that really were at the peak of college basketball generally this season. So I think seeing like maybe a more mid-tier Big Ten team against Baylor, maybe that gives you some indication of whether Illinois is possibly capable of beating them, right? We've seen Illinois and Purdue play. So if they give them a game for 30 minutes, and then down the stretch Baylor wins, then I think that Illinois is feeling much better about the situation.
I would agree. Yeah.
A common opponent play them.
Yeah. I think I would have answered no to your question about would it be a good game if Purdue wasn't 2-1 against the likes of Ohio State. And then you add in, like we were just saying, the trajectory with Baylor's COVID thing. I would say the answer is a strong maybe that's a very good game. And
Jaden Ivey's been coming on lately for them. He's a guy that next year, if you're looking for like a freshman to sophomore leap, Jaden Ivey has got to be up there for me. I think he turns the corner on the consistency. His jumper is the only thing standing in the way from him being like a first team type player for the Big Ten. So we'll see what ends up developing with him, but he's a guy that can get a little bit hot and maybe carry a team, maybe not shooting wise, but with just some of his energy and his ability to get downhill. So interesting, at least interesting enough.
Yeah. So
and a good test for Purdue into a season where they're heading next year and maybe
definitely
in a much better spot. So
definitely. And then obviously Purdue's associate head coach was just hired by Penn State. I think that's a great hire. We won't spend too much time on that.
Shrewsberry, isn't that what his name is?
Micah Shrewsberry. He was he was an assistant for Brad Stevens with the Celtics. I don't know exactly how great
he's going to start from ground zero. They literally just like leveled that. Every single player came back.
So the players that actually gave public quotes, I want to say that might just be Seth Lundy. he said that there's a very strong chance he comes back, but he didn't want to handcuff himself without knowing.
Right. So they're entering into the portal and feeling out the new head coach is what they'll probably end up doing.
Correct. I would guess that like 4 out of the 2 guys come back. 4 out of the 6 guys come back. I don't know which guys.
That many.
I think that Micah's one of his strong suits is kind of the culture he's going to build and how he's going to connect with guys.
You think he's going to be able to just put his arms around him and be like, listen, guys, I know this is a completely new regime, but I saw what you did. I think we can do a little bit better. Let's give it another shot.
That's exactly.
They were close this year. Mm-hmm. They were in the top 30 in KenPom for a stretch. They didn't play enough games to maybe give us a larger sample size.
Yeah.
But that Michigan State, Penn State game that came down to it, both teams were kind of like bubbly at that point in the season. If Penn State had won that game, maybe it would have been a little bit different because they beat Maryland down the stretch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they just
twice,
a couple games to get over the hump. So,
and then they lost to Michigan to kick off their Big Ten schedule by, I want to say, 4 points. They lost to Ohio State the first time, if they played them twice. The first time they were leading the most of the second half and lost by 4 or 5. So they're a team that's had a lot of trouble at the end of games closing them out, but they've led or competed in a lot of these games that Michigan State ended up winning to get into the tournament against I don't think Illinois was a game that they were competitive in. Maybe or either Illinois or Iowa, one of those two they weren't as competitive in, but they did very well against like the rest of the top 4 of the Big Ten. They just couldn't pull out the wins at the end. But yeah, I don't think it'll be much of a distraction for Shrewsberry, but it's just, I guess it's another storyline I threw out there. If maybe he's kind of looking at that Penn State job a little more than he's looking at some of these offensive coordination kind of set. I don't know, but that's another angle I threw in there with Purdue, because Purdue kind of has that now, and people are wondering if Micah's even going to stay for all the games, because he's already over there posting videos in the Penn State gear talking about.
Was he really?
Yep. He changed his bio to head coach of Penn State basketball. Header is Penn State, talking to James Franklin, talking to the Penn State players. So that I
can't blame him for that. He's probably been waiting for this for a long time to get tapped.
I definitely don't blame him either.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. Figure it's something worth bringing up though when these details very important are in March Madness. But so we have Baylor coming out of this bracket. That leaves one more region left. We'll go through this real quickly, I guess. Illinois or Drexel.
We've been doing all night.
So it's 1:24 a.m. Eastern time here. But we will.
I got 34. You said 24? You're 10 minutes behind.
No, you're right. No, one. Yeah. So late that can't even focus on the numbers on the screen. But so Illinois Drexel. We both have Illinois, I'm assuming. Do you have Josh Pastner's Georgia Tech, or do you have Porter Moser's Loyola Chicago?
Ooh, man. I have Loyola Chicago, obviously. Top 10 KenPom team. Can we just talk briefly for a moment that Illinois, like their reward for winning the Big Ten tournament and showing maybe that they were the best team in the conference this year was getting bent over by the committee and having the worst path to possibly trying to get to an Elite 8 or Final 4.
Yep.
There's one fan base that has like a complete qualm after having spent such a long time away from just the bracket and a hope to make a decent run. It's got to be Illinois fans.
Yeah.
Chicago looks like a top 10 KenPom team, or you see a Georgia Tech team that's been like red hot and has a pretty good amount of athletes in it, so at least a challenge. Tennessee and Oklahoma State in the next one. I've heard that Liberty is good enough to possibly beat Oklahoma State. They're like a better team, so that's interesting. But if for some reason, you get Oklahoma, Tennessee, where would you go with that one? Do you have an opinion on that?
I have Cade Cunningham beating Tennessee.
Yes. Tennessee's been up and down all this year. Plus that Derek guy on Twitter that was a Tennessee fan. I mean, hopefully their team loses before our team does, so we can just shit all over him for his take that we weren't going to make the tournament, which he was almost right about.
Yeah, he was almost right.
Not 100%. Yeah, he was definitely right.
Question marks at point guard and things like that. Yup.
There was some seriously good points that were not properly evaluated by many people.
Speaking of predictions on Twitter, I want to give a nod of the head to Big Sad for saying, I want to say back in October that Ohio was going to scare some 4 seed in the first round. And here we are, Ohio playing 4 seed Virginia off that COVID uncertainty. And I don't know if they end up beating Virginia, but that's a very specific prediction to make in October to now be kind of looking at it as something that's realistic here, but
Big Sav with the shout out.
Yep.
That's pretty good.
But yeah, so like you were saying, that Loyola Chicago seeding at 8 not only is unfair to Loyola Chicago, but it's also unfair to Illinois. I know Gary Parrish and Matt Norlander had a pretty lengthy segment of them unloading on the selection committee for that. They
What
said
did they say about that? I didn't get to listen to that yet.
Yeah, so basically, kind of the sentiment I said of, not only are you screwing the team that was top 10 in KenPom, and you're kind of throwing away their entire accomplishment set, you're also screwing the 1 seed that.
I said that I thought that they were screwing Illinois. I guess I didn't even really think about it from Loyola Chicago's standpoint.
Yeah,
it kind of fucked them too.
Yeah, it's both ways. It's just not ideal for either of the two teams. So that leaves, we already said that we were going to have
Tennessee, Oklahoma State.
Yep. So then
you said Oklahoma coming out of that. Do you have Illinois beating Oklahoma State?
I do. Yes. I think Illinois is the second best team in the country. I think it goes Gonzaga, Illinois, Alabama for me.
I would maybe have Baylor as third there, but I don't disagree. Illinois really turned it on at the end of the season.
Yeah.
And the largest question mark I had with them was some of their size of the perimeter. Jacob Grandison kind of filled in some of that power forward spot in a position that they needed. And when you got that type of lead guard in March with like a mini Shaq in the paint, it's probably a pretty good combination.
If this was like before the COVID break, Baylor, I know I keep bringing that part up and holding it against them, but like then Baylor and Gonzaga are just a tier above everybody else for me. If that was still the Baylor we were looking at, but right now Baylor's kind of taking a slight backseat.
What if Baylor comes out and wins like the first 2 games? They see Hartford, whatever, they smash them by 20 plus. They see North Carolina and they beat them by like 15 plus. If they come out of the gates in the first weekend and really like show out, would your opinion change?
Yeah, I would say they would be back. If like they are, I would say if they're winning that second game against North Carolina or Wisconsin by 18 or more,
like in the teens.
Yeah, I would be very confident to put them straight into the national title game against Gonzaga if they're winning that second game by about 18-ish.
Okay, that's fair.
So so that brings us to I guess let's go to Syracuse, San Diego State. I'm having Syracuse win this game, San Diego State winning this game, not just because they're the better team, but also because I have internal outrage against Syracuse at the moment. So those are my 2 reasons for why I'm having San Diego State win this game. Not only are they more deserving, but I will not be putting Syracuse in the second round of my bracket.
I like the spite pick. I will side with you and say fuck them, and we'll take San Diego State.
All right. So then we have West Virginia, Morehead State. I have West Virginia. I'm assuming you do as well.
Yes.
And then I have Rutgers over Clemson. That's a 10 versus a 7. I have the 10 winning. Who do you have in that 10 versus 7?
I don't know what to make of Rutgers this year. I thought that Ron Harper obviously started fantastically, and then towards the end of the season, just even midway through, all his shooting dropped off. He like disappeared like a pumpkin. I saw Clemson play Purdue early in the season. I thought they looked pretty good, decently athletic. I think that this one's going to be pretty close. It's basically a pick 'em. I'll lean Big Ten in this one, but it wouldn't surprise me if Clemson beat Rutgers.
Yeah, this is one of those like battle tested kind of things. Like we were saying, they
got to root for the conference.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Plus, I'm going to give the nod to Geo Baker's Rutgers Scarlet Knights because he was dunking on Rothstein for him saying the guy shouldn't complain about the food. So I'm going to go ahead and
like that one because I retweeted that out. It's like, well, they're making $900 million. So complain about runny omelets.
Yeah.
Rothstein has just a weird vibe sometimes. I think he's generally really good at his job, but comments like that, I don't know.
I find myself yelling, "This is March," like in the most random like occurrences of college basketball games. But then he has these kind of takes of like pro amateur.
I told my wife today, I'm like, we sleep in May.
Yeah. I should have been using like Will Wade, American Gangster, and all of his catchphrases along the way of this bracket show, but I guess I missed that chance. But Yeah, that's Rothstein's a polarizing topic, it seems like these days. So we have Rutgers and Houston at the bottom of that bracket. I have Houston winning. I'm assuming you do as well.
Yeah, Houston wins the next one too.
Yep.
And we're gonna get a West Virginia Houston matchup. I'm excited if that happens.
Yeah, I also have Houston winning that one.
I was split between that, but I leaned Houston in my bracket.
Yeah.
I haven't watched them a ton, and they didn't play a ton of good competition this year, but I'll never forgive Kelvin Sampson for not putting somebody on the ball in the waning seconds of that Michigan game so Poole hit that shot.
Yep.
They didn't put anybody at the ball. I didn't understand that at all.
Yeah. It did intrigue me that they only allowed 57 points per game, but like you said, not really the greatest competition. But I kind of want to see what that looks like against like a Big 12 West Virginia kind of team. We'll see what happens there. But I feel good about that Houston pick. So we are in the Sweet 16 there. I'm assuming we both have Illinois beating Cade Cunningham and Oklahoma State.
Yeah, despite the tough break, I have them coming out of the Midwest.
Yep, as do I. So that sets up the final four for me of Gonzaga, Alabama, Baylor, Illinois. Do you have the same final four, or did we differ there?
I actually do. The bracket that I chose was that in both of them.
Yes. Okay.
It's a lot of chalk. We said 3 1s and a 2. That's
correct.
Probably not going to happen, but
yes,
it's really hard to pick against it.
That's the issue. It's supposed to have 2 1s, a 2, and a 3, but I could not see myself going ahead and forcing that into the
only thing that would happen, in my opinion, is Texas somehow comes out of the East if that was to happen.
Yep, I believe that's exactly.
I don't really see that in any other side.
Yeah, I believe that's actually exactly what John Rothstein has happening in his bracket. So that gives us, I believe, Gonzaga and Illinois in the national title game, or do you have Gonzaga and Baylor?
I have a combination of 2. I did 2 brackets and I split it. I did Gonzaga winning it in both of my brackets. I had Illinois in one and Baylor, I think, in the other.
Okay.
I mean, that's the game we all want to see. We've been waiting all year to see it. I mean,
yep, that's true.
Part of me hopes we get it, and if Illinois gets to the title game, we're never going to hear the end of it on Twitter from all their fans. Like,
that's true.
I kind of like that we still are the Big Ten team that holds the last one. I want us to be the one that breaks it again. You know, I love this Illinois team. I really do. I like a lot of parts of it. if they win the whole thing, good for them, good for the conference, but I just would prefer it to be Michigan State.
Yeah. And then the other thing, kind of to mention that Michigan State being the last one to win it and Michigan State breaking that slump, there have been 2 previous occurrences that Appalachian State has made the NCAA tournament, 1979 and 2000. Michigan State won both of the national titles in each of those years. So it's basically a lock that Michigan State's winning the national title this year. Additionally, if that doesn't sell you, it was a 21-year gap between the first 2 titles, and it's been 21 years since the second title. So that's 2 different reasons why Michigan State will be the national champion this year. If not, if that doesn't convince you, then I guess you could follow either our brackets of having Gonzaga win that title, or go ahead and do whatever you want, as I'm sure that might do better than what we said here today anyway. But thanks for joining us. Do you have anything else, David? Do you want to let people know where they can find you on Twitter?
If anyone's listening still at the end of this one, we thank you for your patience. I thought we had some fun, but
yeah, definitely. But yeah, you guys can follow David on Twitter. You want to drop your app for them?
Yeah, it's just a Spartan Hoops _DK. Find me on there. See the website. Check it out.
Yeah, definitely. They do great work over there at SpartanHoops.com. So make sure you guys check that out. And then, as you guys know, I'm over there at 24/7 Sports' MSU site. Definitely check that out. Get a VIP subscription if you haven't already. We're doing a lot of recruiting work, covering MSU football, but also basketball recruiting should heat up here soon.
We didn't talk about it, but there's going to be some obviously attrition and transfer talk in our vocabulary this offseason, and I think it's going to be a good thing.
Might have to have another podcast on that later in the offseason as more names start to emerge. But we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Thanks everyone for listening, and thanks a lot for being here today, DK.
All right. Thank you, man. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too. Appreciate it.